And so, going from Antoine to Anton, we will go
I'll
into...
see what you... Oh! Oh, I see what you
we
did
will
there!
go into this week's Themes to Be Heard segment, which for this episode we decided to discuss Depeche Mode's 1990 music video for Enjoy the Silence.
And conversely, you did not take any notes for our scene again. I didn't take any notes for our Themes to Be Heard.
Well, so I just kind of took notes on, like, the background of this. So, Depeche Mode is my favorite band. And, Enjoy the Silence, to me, is one of the best songs ever written. It was written by Martin Gore, who is the main songwriter for Depeche Mode. He's also the second vocalist in the band. Dave Gahan is the main vocalist, the guy with the really deep voice.
Listen, Dave Gahan is so fucking cool. Like, he just is. I think he's awesome.
But, so Depeche Mode were this popular, like, new wave band in the 80s, and then they did start getting dark. They started dressing kind of like S&M, like dominatrix kind of fashion, but they started getting dark.
It's almost like post-gothic.
Yeah. So then 1989, 1990, well, at this point they were huge because they had released this album in the late 80s called Music for the Masses, and they had done this big tour, and they have, there was a documentary made at the time called 101 because they did their Music for the Masses tour, and their final show, the 101st show, was at the Rose Bowl in California, and it was this big deal. I've actually met people that attended this concert. That's how big it was. And so they had a documentary made, and just when you think, like, oh, this band can't get any bigger, they release this album called Violator, and the first single was Personal Jesus, and then they released Enjoy the Silence, and they just blew up. Like, this song has been covered by so many people.
Hundreds of times.
Most notably by Tori Amos and Lacuna Coil. Lacuna Coil, I think they went to #1 with their version, and the New York Post actually considers their cover, like, on the top 100 covers list of all time.
It's a good cover.
And Tori Amos did a cover, just her and a piano, and Stereo Gum considered it in the top 8 of the top Depeche Mode covers of all time. Other people have also covered it, like Breaking Benjamin. There was a German producer, DJ, named Mike Coughlin that did a version of it called The Silence that actually went #1 in Europe, I believe. But this song is certified gold in the US and Germany, and surprisingly, as well known as it is and how popular and how many times it's been covered, I don't think it was ever even, like, nominated for a Grammy. It just won, like, a Brit. Yeah, like a Brit award. And it only went to #1 in Denmark, Poland, Spain, and it did go to #1 in the US, but on the Billboard Alternative top 100 or whatever. So the song was originally written as more of a ballad, because as most of you who know the song know the lyrics, all I ever wanted, all I ever needed is here in my arms. So it's kind of about just wanting the simple things, like the things that you already have. So it was written as a ballad. And Depeche Mode at this time was Dave Gahan, the singer, Martin Gore, the second singer, the main songwriter.
Who also played guitar.
Yeah. At this point, he really started playing more guitar on their songs. Alan Wilder, who is no longer with the group, and many people miss him because he did contribute a lot to the group. And then Andrew Fletcher,
who notoriously doesn't contribute anything to the group. Like, there's a big joke.
That's not on my copy of Monster Ballad.
Hey, Marky Mark. Marky Mark from the Marky Mark, Matty Ice and Marky Mark.
So tomorrow night at 10 p.m. on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, go check out the Marky Mark and Matty Ice podcast.
Yeah.
Especially if you're really into video games and stuff. They're very entertaining.
If you're a nerd,
and they're very funny.
Yep.
But then, so this song was written as a ballad, and I think you can find like original bits and pieces of it on YouTube and stuff. But then Alan Wilder in the studio like suggested they kind of go with a more up-tempo version of it, and that's what you hear on the album. And at this time, they were working a lot with this photographer, music video director named Anton Corbin, and he is most known for his work with Depeche Mode and U2. He has directed 20 of Depeche Mode's music videos. So he came up with this concept of a king that is kind of just wandering around looking like for something simple. And if initially
it really does look like this king looking for his moment of peace.
Yeah, initially the band rejected the idea, so then he kind of just expanded it a little more, like, well, what if we have this king who's just looking for a quiet place to sit, and like these different locations. So most of the video is just Dave Gahan dressed like a king, like a stereotypical. He has
this long flowing robe, and actually that's why we have this crown here, and it's actually right next to our Depeche Mode VHS tapes. I don't know if you could see that that's a Depeche Mode tape right there, but that's why that's there.
So they decided to go with this theme. There's a children's storybook called The Little Prince, and it's this philosophical, like, children's story. And so they kind of used those themes, and Dave Gahan is just walking around, and we haven't put up the pictures for this. We'll get the pictures going, but he's walking around, and he's just carrying, like, a deck chair. And they shot it in, like, the Scottish Highlands, the Swiss Alps, and the, like, parts of Portugal. So we mostly are just following him, walking around with this chair, and he's just a king that has everything except a quiet place to sit. So that's basically the video, and then there are shots of the band in black and white.
I also wanted to point out the really cool different interpretations of the Violator album cover, because it's this very simple painting of this flower, but it flashes throughout the course of the video in different colors and palettes, and that's really, there's the Violator album cover.
Yeah. So Anton Corbin, he photographed like a lot of famous musicians, like Bruce Springsteen, but he is most notably known for working with U2 and Depeche Mode. He is now more of a film director. He directed this movie in 2007 called Control, which is about Ian Curtis from Joy Division, and it's this really great movie. But since then, he's directed The American with George Clooney and A Most Wanted Man.
Why does that sound so familiar?
I know it's based on a book, but yeah, he started in music and mostly did music videos, but so there are two different versions of this music video. One ends with Dave Gahan like looking right into the camera, singing the last line of the song, which is "Enjoy the Silence," and then he puts his finger up like this to shh. And the other version just ends with him sitting on a chair in the snow. And then so there's not really like a big difference, but both versions have like different shots of the band as a group.
Now, when I just want to reiterate something. That's a good picture. When Tara says that they shot in Portugal and the Swiss Alps and the coast of Portugal, the Swiss Alps, the Scottish Highlands, I really want to emphasize the idea that these are shots of Gahan carrying this chair, walking through these beautiful landscapes, that they actually traveled the world to get these landscapes, to get these shots of these landscapes. It's actually Gahan because when I was watching it, I was like, there's no freaking, are these matte paintings? Did they just like go to different, like, is it a sound stage? No, they went to these places.
Actually, there are some shots that aren't of him. The long shots of him walking in the snow, it's actually the producer of the video, Richard Bell, because Dave Gahan was getting sick of the cold and he left the set. So they dressed the producer up instead and had him do the long shots in the snow. But the video, it's a very simple concept with a very powerful song, and it's very vivid. I love the look of it. It's like lomography, like film photography. It's so vivid. And there are pictures that come up. There's another video of the song. It was shot for French TV, but they actually filmed it on the South Tower of the World Trade Center, right here.
Oh, wow.
So there's that video as well where they performed it on the World Trade Center. You can find that on YouTube. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have. It's one of the best songs ever written. A very simple concept for a music video, but very iconic. Just the look of him dressed as a king and walking around with this like lawn chair, because he's this man that has everything and he just wants a quiet place to sit. And that is Enjoy the Silence.
It is, and it's an excellent song. I feel that it's a super influential video on the art of videos, because it really did bring, because at that time music videos were mostly just performance shots. They were mostly performance pieces.
Especially coming from like all the hair metal videos and stuff.
So to take a music video and turn it into this artistic auteur piece probably put a lot of people on their heels the first time they saw it. Like, oh wow, you can tell a story in an artistic way with a music video. And then actually from then on, from that point on, we start to see a lot of music videos that are these intricate stories that go with the song. And that from here to about the possibly late 90s is where we get all the great music videos.
Yeah, I remember being really young and like on VH1 and MTV, they always were coming out with those lists of like the 100 music videos of all time. Like, music videos were a real art form, and there are still some artists that
attempt that,
but like with YouTube and everything and MTV, as far as I know, I don't think they show any music videos at all. Like, I know at one point they would at like 3 a.m. or something, like very odd hours, but honestly, I don't even know if they do that anymore.
Most recently, okay, and I wanted to run this by our viewers and you, because I'll do it by myself, but most recently, the art of the music video was revived almost in a standardized movie form by Bo Burnham. Mm-hmm. Bo Burnham's Inside is basically a collection of music videos set to his songs that really tell these short stories, but also this longer narrative throughout the course of the movie. And I think it's masterfully done. And one of the things I actually want to do is track by track go through it and analyze each one.
For Inside, too, I feel like I read recently he filmed it in the Nightmare on Elm Street house. I miss watching music videos at night with friends.
Yeah, totally.
So do we, Mark.
Totally.
Okay, so my first job, I worked third shift, and like, at that time, I was more into like MTV2, like,
or Fuse.
They didn't, yes.
Fuse.
And where I worked, there was a VCR, so I used to have so many VHS tapes with like random music videos, or like MTV had like making the video, and I had all of these episodes of like My Chemical Romance making Helena.
Yep.
And there was Subterranean on MTV too, and the VJ.
Is that where you got your name? Is it really?
Yeah,
that's
that
cool.
Was a big, because that's how I first heard of like MIA and Franz Ferdinand.
Really?
And yeah, because the VJ's name was Jim. I don't remember his last name. That's where I first heard of like the Yeah Yeah Yeahs. They used to play.
See, I just had cool college friends who that's all the stuff
like,
they listened to.
I wish I still had all my VHS tapes, because I have so many like episodes. Like Sunday nights, I think, was when Subterranean was on, and like artists like you might not know, like Tom Veck. He was like this British singer-songwriter. Like, he used to interview like all these like obscure artists, that like Block Party. That's how I heard about Block Party. It was such a good time in my life, and I think that VJ ended up going to Much Music or VH1 or something. I wish I could remember his last name, but
like, I remember the mid-2000s, early mid-2000s was the revival of Headbangers Ball. So that's where heavy metal, it was like just post-nu metal. All of the heavy metal bands started getting enough music to make videos again.
Yeah.
And they would try to do cool videos. I mean, every once in a while you'd see something by like Cannibal Corpse from the 90s where it's just like gore. But there were some cool videos, but the problem with those is a lot of them were just performance pieces. Yeah, I was super into... I experienced Franz Ferdinand on some weird music site. I couldn't remember what it was, what it was called. Oh, I've been listening to a lot of Franz Ferdinand because in movie news, which we weren't even planning to do tonight, we watched the documentary about the Sparks Brothers. Sparks!
If you've never heard of Sparks, oh man, what a career they've had. But they formed a super group with Franz Ferdinand, like, I think it was like 10 years ago, but they were called FFS.
Yeah, 2013.
But yeah, the documentary was made by Edgar Wright, and such a fascinating... It's like 2 hours long,
No. It's like 3.5 hours long.
This band, it's just these two brothers, and the career they've had, like, they were even influential, like, on Depeche Mode and, like, all these other bands.
And one of the things that, especially Simon Le Bon from Duran Duran is talking on this documentary, and he says...
Oh, he's not in it.
Oh,
it's
who was
Nick
it?
Rhodes and John Taylor.
It was Nick Rhodes.
Yeah.
He says, whether or not you know it, your favorite band... Whether or not they know it, your favorite band was influenced by Sparks. Because someone that they were influenced by was probably influenced by Sparks.
Yeah.
You can follow their career back far enough to where they influenced somebody that you like.
Yeah. So yeah, we've been listening to a lot of Sparks.
Well, I listened to FFS, and then I went and listened to Franz Ferdinand just to, like, compare. Because Sparks does this very ethereal, like, dream pop music, and Franz Ferdinand fit in there. And then you listen to Franz Ferdinand stuff as a band on their own, and it's a little more old rock oriented.
Franz Ferdinand just wanted to make girls in the club dance when they came out. That was what they wanted to do, and oh my god, I used to love them so much. I used to have a Franz Ferdinand t-shirt that I wore all the time.
I just remember that Take Me Out video was so cool.
Yeah. I loved, like, their first album on AOL Instant Messenger. One of my very first names was Dark O Matinee because they had a song called Dark of the Matinee. Speaking of Duran Duran, you should hear me sing Hungry Like a Wolf on karaoke. It's absolutely horrible.
That's fine.
Where do you do that?
Where do you do you gotta tell us where you do karaoke. Because what? Dude, I'm there. It'll be you, me, it'll be you, me, and I'll bring my buddy Adam. He'll do his rendition of Chandelier. We'll make it a night.
Oh man.
But this was fun. Like, because this is such an influential music video, we have the chance to talk about music videos as a whole.
Yeah. Well, if we're kind of going down that music route now too, so we just were kind of talking about the Sparks Brothers documentary, but on Thanksgiving, Disney Plus just released the Peter Jackson documentary for the Beatles Get Back. We've only watched part 1 so far, but it ended on such a cliffhanger. Hooligans, it had a fire though.
Hooligans had a fire? That's a bummer. I haven't been there in a long time, but I remember that was a cool place. That's out that way.
Oh.
It's out, like, it's not near other bars.
But yeah, if you're a fan of the Beatles, Peter Jackson just released this whole
4 hour, each part is like 4 hours long.
The whole thing is 7 hours, but the first part was released on Thanksgiving, so that's what we watched when we got back home. And it ended on such a cliffhanger because it was right when George Harrison left the band. And then the rest of them were going to go to, I think, John Lennon's house and kind of figure out what to do. And I guess they were fighting.
They talked to George, and all it says is they talked to George. It did not go well. And that's how it ended. And we were like, no!
The whole thing is out now. They were just releasing each part, like, each day. But I believe the whole thing is out now. But if you're a fan of the Beatles, there was, when Let It Be was released, they were making, like, a documentary at the time. And the documentary, when it was released, I guess, did not go very well. Like, it did not make them look, like, in a good light.
It was edited in a way to make their fighting look worse than it actually was.
Yeah, so Peter Jackson somehow got, like, all the footage and, like,
edited
all
back
the audio that they could salvage, and it is really fascinating to watch them, like, how they write songs, all the goofing off they did. Like, I was laughing out loud.
There are multiple points where you see somebody halfway through rolling a joint. Like, they've got the paper in their hand and they're just talking. You never see them smoke it, but you'll always see them like,
But there are moments where, like, McCartney and Lennon, they're just playing their guitars, like, looking at each other, and then it's just magic.
Like, and they'll start playing, like, an old 50s, like, rockabilly song, like, rock song, and they'll look at each other, and one of them will play the riff, and then they'll lock eyes, and then they'll just start playing the song together, and then it's just, like, it happens.
Yeah.
And it's so cool, but, and my whole life, I'd imagine George, because my mom was a George Harrison fan first and a Beatles fan second.
I think George is my favorite Beatle, and you still have never finished the Martin Scorsese documentary on him.
Didn't I fall asleep? I think I fell asleep.
I think so, because that one is long too, but it's called Living in the Material World.
Yeah.
But watching that, just... George was my favorite instantly after watching that.
So growing up, I'd always assumed that when George left the Beatles, it was like a half-baked, fuck you, you're cool. And it's not. He walked up to their producer and he said, tell the boys I'll see them in the clubs, hey? And he just walked out. And that was basically like, I'm not coming back here, but if I see them, we're cool. If I see them outside of here, I don't...
I mean, you could see his frustration, though, because it's like he would be doing his thing, and then Paul McCartney would be like, you need to cut back because you're overshining John when he's doing this part. And, like, you could see, like, the frustration because, like, he knew what he wanted to do, and it was to the point where he's like, just tell me what you want me to do. I'll do it.
He didn't feel like an equal part of the band.
Yeah.
And Ringo didn't care if he was an equal part of the band. Because there's lots of time where they're talking, they're arguing, and Ringo's just like staring at his drum set. Mm-hmm. He's just waiting. Like he just waited it out.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
I would suggest that. I would suggest that if you have Disney Plus to watch Get Back, the documentary by Peter Jackson about the. Yeah. And it's not even a documentary. It's just a re-editing and release of this footage. Because he doesn't really... I mean, he adds stuff in every now and then, like pictures and stuff. He doesn't change anything. He just put the footage back in the correct order.
Yeah. And then if you have Netflix, you can watch the Sparks Brothers on Netflix. But now...
Meat and potatoes!